Welcome to Wizards Institute, the #1 community to learn smart investing and financial independence.
Today, our guest is Alvin Wang Graylin. Mr. Graylin is the China President of HTC VR, leading the Vive business in the region, the President of the Virtual Reality Venture Capital Alliance, and also the Vice Chairman of the Industry of VR Association, with 300-plus industry company members. He has over 20 years of business management experience in the tech industry, including 15 years in Greater China. Alvin is a serial entrepreneur, having founded 4 venture-backed startups in the mobile and internet spaces. Additionally, he has held $100 million plus P&L roles at public companies such as Intel and Trend Micro. Alvin received his BS in electrical engineering from the University of Washington, MS in computer science from MIT, and MBA from MIT's Sloan School of Management.
All right, today we're excited to have my longtime friend Alvin Wang as our guest. We're excited because I wanted to catch up with Alvin. It's been quite a few years. I think the last time I saw you was a major event. You were actually a boxing star. We can talk about that. But as you know, Alvin, we discussed, we are publishing this book, 10 Commandments of Investing, which really is a book on summarizing the guiding principles from the world's greatest investment wizards. But as part of our deep dive, we're also looking at the high potential investment sectors, whether it's real estate, stocks, technology. We did quite a bit of technology. We did a session with our mutual friend Bobby Lee on blockchain. But a sector that I really want to deep dive with you, obviously, is a space that you are probably a foremost global expert on VR, AR, and tech overall. So thank you for being here, Alvin. I know you're a sought after speaker. You're super busy managing your various businesses. We'll start with perhaps your intro on just what you're doing now, a bit of your background, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problem. And happy to have you to catch up. It's been such a long time. So I've been in the tech space for really since I was a kid. I actually did my first startup back in the late 80s, making and selling computers and networks. And then since then, I've had 4 different venture-backed startups. I've also worked at large corporates like IBM and Intel, and helping Intel start up their China offices back in the early 90s. And also I've been in the investment side as well. So helping start up a accelerator, helping invest on the corporate side for over 100 deals over the last 4 years here at HTC, as well as organizing the Virtual Reality Venture Capital Alliance, which is about 40 to 50 VCs who are focused, an association of 40 to 50 VCs who are focused on the VR AR space. So I've been on both sides of the table, and hopefully can help to add a little perspective.
Yes, great. I think I would like to deep dive into at least 3 areas for which we think you have great insights. One is obviously the space that you're playing right now, the VR AR space, as heading the one of the market leaders, HTC. Second is your views on China tech and overall Asia, sort of the whole geopolitics side of it. And third is just giving your investment experience, your own investment philosophies that hopefully will flow into our book as well. So we'll start with the first topic, Alvin, if you don't mind. Maybe tell us a bit about HTC's background and what you're doing there, and then maybe give us an overview on the sector, sort of where we are with the sector.
Sure. So HTC right now is one of the top 3 global leaders in the XR space. So XR being AR, VR, MR. Kind of, I know there's a lot of R's, but at the end of the day, they all come together. Within the next few years, essentially, you're going to have a unified device that will do all of these different types of interfaces, and whether or not how much of the real world, how much of the virtual world comes together, really determines what people call AR and VR and MR. But we've been more on the hardware side in the past, where kind of the first 6 degrees of freedom VR devices allow people to walk around the entire room, track their hands and legs and their whole body. That was what really brought VR onto the consumer stage back in the 2016, 2015 timeframe. And since then, HTC really been the technology leader in the VR space. Now, since then we've also kind of broadened out into the platform side. So we launched our Viveport, which is a content store that then services all the other hardware manufacturers. So any VR device can actually access the thousands of pieces of VR content that is on the Viveport. And then recently, we've actually started to create our own content. So in addition to my role in managing the China business and the phone and VR business here, I also am running the software business unit for HTC. So we are now creating what's kind of the Microsoft Office for XR, something that
Okay.
will allow people to have a daily use app that helps them make their life better, whether it's to make their remote school better or remote office work better, or collaboration, or attending a conference, or attending a virtual event, a virtual concert. All of that is made possible by this new software suite that we are creating and launching actually very soon. So that's kind of a high level of what HTC is doing. In addition, actually, we also have our own accelerator group. It's called ViveX, and this was the part of the business where we've been investing very heavily in the ecosystem, really helping build the entire supporting infrastructure for XR to take off. So the industry, I think, has really gone through a couple of cycles, even just in the last 5 years. Where 2015, 2016 was really kind of a peak hype cycle for, if you look at the Gartner hype cycle, it was kind of the first peak. And, probably 2017 and 18, it dropped down a little bit into more of a trough. And this year, actually, in the late last year, starting to come back up again, particularly now accelerated by the pandemic and how people are now forced to socially distance, whether for social reasons or for work or for school. Everybody's now doing things from home instead of doing things face to face, which makes the need to have a new medium a lot more, I guess, salient in terms of value to the customer. All of us are right now spending so much time in front of the camera, in front of these video screens and doing these video conferences. And people talk about Zoom fatigue, right? And it's actually, it's a real thing. If you're on a Zoom call 8 hours a day, you're just drained, right? And you also lose attention span. It's very difficult for people to keep their attention on something when they're just looking at a screen, whether it's one face or 10 faces. You get distracted. You might turn your camera off and start looking at your phone or looking outside. What they call multitasking is actually essentially being distracted. That happens a lot in the kind of video-based communication model. So this is also kind of the reason why a lot of the MOOC courses have very, very low completion rates. You look at less than 5% of people who start courses actually finish them. It's just because it's hard for somebody to pay attention for hours or months on a course or on a meeting. To keep their attention span. Now in XR, and we actually just came out with this new study a couple weeks ago. We compared video events or video meetings to audio meetings to face-to-face meetings to virtual kind of 3D spatial meetings. And it was actually very interesting that, of course, the most productive, highly effective meetings were the face-to-face. That was, we gave them all the same problems to solve. And they solved it in the least amount of time. I think it was a little around five minutes or so to solve the problems. And then it was for the least productive was the audio meetings, where it was something like 8 or 9 minutes to solve the problems. And then the second least productive was the video meetings, which was somewhere around 7 to 8 minutes. And then at the virtual meetings, we weren't sure where it was going to go. But essentially what happened was that it was very, very close. It was like 5 minutes and 30 seconds to complete. So people can be very, very effective, almost as effective as being face-to-face when they're in a spatial environment. They're more focused. They actually feel a tighter connection and teamwork with the rest of their team. We measured their skin conductance to see their flow state and their sense of teamwork. And it was actually higher. Their level of teamwork was actually higher in a virtual space than it was in the face-to-face, because what we found from the research was that face-to-face, there's usually an alpha person, a boss or somebody who speaks a lot, and they take over the conversation. So not everybody feels like they can contribute. Whereas in the virtual space, everybody feels more equal, and they all are represented by their avatars versus, you know, somebody who they associate with a domineering position. So I think that that's kind of where the future is going. And you know, we're being forced for the next few years probably to spend a lot more time apart than we are together. So the need for this technology will actually become, you know, a much more relevant than ever before. So we've definitely seen a huge interest, and now we're also, you know, using these same platforms to do events. We've done fashion shows. This week we're doing the Venice Film Festival in our platform. Like a month ago, we did a couple concerts. We've done also the Cannes Film Festival. They put in 50-something movies into the VR app, and you can go into the virtual space and watch movies together with your friends, kind of in a virtual theater that is like the Cannes location. So, you know, it definitely, we're allowing people to keep continuing to have their life, even under the current circumstances, or to regain some part of their life that they've lost because of the social distancing. So I think over the next few years, we'll find that there's going to be an acceleration of demand for these technologies. And also because of what's happening with optics and with screens and with mobile computing chips, all these devices are getting smaller, they're getting lighter. You know, about a year and a half ago, we released the Vive Focus device as first standalone 6 degrees freedom standalone. A few months later, Oculus released their Quest standalone. So now standalone devices are really the kind of the go-to standard for VR devices. And then what you'll find that, you know, this year some companies have started to put out early versions of their kind of glasses, or, you know, what they call thin and light VR devices that look more like kind of sunglasses or maybe ski goggles versus the boxes, right? So we'll see those starting to proliferate over the next couple of years. And once these new generations of mobile chips go into them, they'll start having both the ability to see your hands and your head and be able to move around, having all the capabilities you used to have on a high-end PC-based device now on a mobile device. So you know, when that happens, then the mass adoption will really start to come in, particularly with the types of apps that we're talking about, where now you can essentially simulate an entire permanent office. One of our apps is called Vive Campus, where you can make either a school campus or a office campus. So I can make an exact digital twin of your office complex, and everybody can actually have their seats and their offices in the same places as their physical one, and people can go in every day in the morning and walk into those offices and feel that sense of community that they are losing today because they're being separated from their friends. And people actually are feeling very lonely these days, you know, and not just kids who are not able to see their friends, but also adults who are not able to see their colleagues, and being, you know, locked up in some closet or in the garage or in the basement where they have their temporary offices. Honestly, it's not necessarily a very healthy thing long term. So people need that sense of belonging, and having a spatial location for people to go into and feel like that's their space actually allows them to regain that sense of belonging and be able to see their colleagues at the water cooler. Sure. Right. Yeah. So be able to have those side conversations that you used to do. You know.
As an aspirational geek, you know, I didn't go to MIT like you, but I do love the technology space, right? So for example, you know, I'm a big fan of the EVs and been better and Tesla, but the space itself, like your space, has been around for a while, and obviously this is the year where Tesla kind of broke out in the industry. Now it's like almost a foregone conclusion. People see EVs taking over ICE. You know, I also looked at and invest in the alternative protein space, and which obviously beyond sort of is now generating this huge excitement over that. Similarly, I'm seeing, okay, yeah, I was saying there's been a lot. AR VR has been around for a while, right? And there's a lot of amazing potential applications. Where do you see us? What do you see as the the killer app or killer company, sort of the Tesla of AR VR or the Beyond Meat of that space that's
Okay.
coming in the next 3 to 5 years?
So I'm not sure if I can predict who's going to be the Tesla of VR AR, but I think from a hardware perspective, the companies that are in there today, it's very difficult for raw startups to join in. Now there are companies that are on the wings, people like Apple, who's been talking about doing a VR or AR device for years. If they come, I think they would have a huge impact. Depending on the product that they actually release. From what my understanding is, their product will probably be more of a lighter, less functional product, and more of a accessory for the phone product. So they may address a certain subsegment of the user's expectations, something like kind of what they did with the Apple Watch. I think that the killer product will be something that will be more like a glasses, that is a smart glasses that has full functionality embedded, and maybe also ability to connect to a 5G network through your phone or directly, where you can run essentially any of the apps that are out there. And I think we're actually very close to that. In my position, I am very fortunate. I get to see a lot of the technology before they come out, and I think the products that are coming out in the next couple of years are going to, from a lot of perspectives, satisfy the needs of both the kind of innovative early adopter segment, as well as kind of the early mainstream, right? I don't know if it's for the late mainstream guys, but I think it will be something that will be fairly light, affordable, and functional. So from a hardware perspective, I'm not really concerned. I don't know if it's any particular one vendor will win. I guess I'm hoping HTC has a very important role in that. But also I think that the key is having a app or killer apps that really allows people to take advantage of it every day, right? I think every new transition has to be brought by a particular use case that people really found valuable. If you look at what happened with PCs, it was Lotus 1, 2, 3 and WordPerfect that made it become popular. If you look at the smartphone, was actually the BlackBerry was the first really successful smartphone. It was just email and BlackBerry Messenger. It wasn't Angry Birds, right? So I think right now, if you look at what's probably going to be the killer app for XR, I actually think it's what I just described. It's really the ability to have remote communication and collaboration in a way that makes you feel like you're there, right? That you can replace that distance that is between people and have that kind of co-presence that people need to feel connected with other people, and that's something that that is being accelerated because of the pandemic. So in a way, I feel like the pandemic may actually become the driving force that forces XR to be accepted now versus it's had a couple of starts and stops back in the 80s and 90s. But I think this time, in fact, when I was first introduced to VR was in the early 90s, beginning of 1991, when these devices were hundreds of thousands of dollars. And people were really hyping it up as the next thing, and I really believed in it. And that was when I actually did some studies, my senior study on it. But I think now the technology is actually at a point where it can meet the needs of the average user, and there are tools out there to create 3D content that is very easy to create, as well as there are huge libraries of models that you can just put in, as well as environments and tools, that some even no code tools that allows non-developers to be able to create content, right? So the popularity of 3D gaming over the last 10, 20 years has really created a huge developer base of essentially 10 plus million developers around the world that can create these worlds. And now with the tools that we're talking about, essentially any teacher or any student can go into these platforms and create their own virtual 3D classes or virtual 3D games with their friends. So I think that's where the world is going. I mean, you even have kind of kindergarten kids are playing Mindscape and or Roblox, and having tens of millions of users in those kind of platforms. So I think that the world is really getting ready for a spatial computing metaphor that will be enabled by these kind of new devices.
Okay, so this is fascinating. So I just want to dig a bit deeper. So you think the hardware side is coming, and you think the hardware that will enable mass adoption is some kind of smart glasses, and perhaps something that Google have worked on but better, maybe HTC or maybe the Apple one that's supposedly coming out. Is that the enabler from a hardware side?
I think that from a hardware perspective, I think that will be the form factor that will likely get kind of the mass adoption we're talking about, right? I mean, even the VR devices out there today, the boxy type devices. I mean, the devices like this or devices like this. I mean, these have been around for a few years, and when they're selling in the millions of units, right? I mean, millions of units is okay for a new industry, but it's not mass market. It is not going to change the world, right? It is not something that your grandma is going to use. But I think if you get to glasses type form factor, or maybe kind of goggle-like form factor, I think glasses may be a little bit further away in terms of if you want like super thin, like the average glasses. I think that might still be a few more years. But goggle type model, kind of like a ski goggle, or maybe more like I guess more like sunglasses with shaders on the sides.
Okay.
Like
so how far are we from that product?
I think I mean, there are already products that are either in dev kits or in kind of early models now that are in that.
But in terms of adoption, mass adoption, Alvin, in terms of obviously the battery life, the price point,
I think you're probably, I would say 2.5 years, 3 years.
From the sunglass, sort of a maybe a 20% of that Vive helmet. It's significantly smaller than that.
I mean, I think the devices, actually, you'll see devices like this being released in 2021. Right? There are already devices that were released earlier this year in specific markets. I know Huawei released something. Panasonic's may announce something. We've announced some things. There's glasses like the Nreal glasses. So there's a number of glasses that are in that realm of form factor that have either been announced or already released. But I think for it to be really useful, it has to get to 6 degrees of freedom. So it has to have all the functionality of those bigger box products, right? That will take a couple of years for it to get all of those functionality embedded into this smaller form factor. So it's kind of like having the brick phone, the 大哥大 phone, versus a I guess a kind of early Nokia phone, or versus this kind of the early smartphones like a Newton versus the iPhone.
Gotcha.
So
gotcha.
I think it will take the functionalities there. We just need to get it smaller and thinner.
Okay, one more hardware question, then we'll go to content. Again, this is really interesting. Must just demo this Neuralink.
Yeah.
Does this make glasses or helmets eventually obsolete? I mean, it's a little out of the way, but it's really not, right? It seems to be potentially doable to take over. But again, I don't really know that much.
Yeah, and I've looked into that somewhat, and I have a lot of friends in the kind of BCI space, right? Brain computer interface and machine computer interface. I think ultimately, very, very long term, there definitely is a potential for that type of a solution, not necessarily the current one, which is kind of you take a chunk out of your skull. I think at some point you'll be able to do a lot of the functionality that he's describing with a much smaller device, right? Something that would be more like LASIK type of an experience versus surgery, where you're going in, taking a quarter size chunk out of your skull and then putting that thing in and then having that giant machine. I think that scares off a lot of people. If you look at some of the reactions from the audience for that demo last week, a lot of people were worried, right? They're saying this is nobody wants to have a hole in their head. There's all kinds of FDA issues, healthcare issues. I think there's certain population that can definitely take advantage of it much earlier. So people who are quadriplegic or blind in one eye or whatever, there are ways that they could use this technology to help the handicapped, right? I think there's definitely benefits here for a healthy person. There's going to be a lot more flexible options in the near to midterm. I think longer term, the benefits of having something embedded and not having to have a device that you put on and off is a good option. But even if you compare to LASIK, if you look at LASIK, it's been around for 30 years. I actually had mine done, I think 12 years ago, but I know that if you look around, there's so many people that still wear glasses. They could go in and spend, I think it was like the best investment I ever made. For a couple $1,000s, I've not had to wear glasses for the last 12, 15 years. Right. I think from a early adopter perspective, I think this technology will see some traction, but I don't see everybody doing it. I think there's a lot of people very, very afraid of what's called wetware, right? Things that go into the body. Whereas if something you put on top, whether you put on glasses or contacts or a ring or watch, I think that's much more amendable to most consumers and users. So there will be but there will be, let's say, super athletes or police or military or whatever. They will get extra benefits from having something embedded, which then they will probably want to put those in. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, like you, I'm an early adopter. I did my LASIK probably 25 years ago, and I love it, right? But I know people just don't want some laser in the eye, or it's a bit scary. It's similar with autopilot and self-driving. I use it every day, and I love it. I think it's safer than me. Certainly when it's raining or at night when I'm tired, it's safer than me. But I also had spoken to people, including investment analysts from Wall Street, that have never sat in a autopilot trial, which kind of baffles me, right? So, but that, I do autopilot with kids in the car. So some people can't imagine that, right? To have something moving at 60 miles an hour with kids in the car. So having something control your brain, that's even harder. But so let's put that sort of fear aside, the regulatory aside, Alvin, from a technical standpoint, to do what you want to do with the content you're talking about. Do you think that form factor, if you to call it that, is a superior form factor that longer term, again, regulatory, government aside, and fear aside, is that a better way to access those applications?
To be honest, I think the technology is a very long ways away from being able to fully replace what would be on these external devices. Just because right now we don't know enough about how the brain works, right? If you say, oh, I want you to take this zoom image that we have and project it into your brain using the Neuralink technology, there's no way. They don't know how to do it. They can't even do it in like 200 by 200 pixel resolution. They don't know how to do it. What they're doing right now is essentially, getting minor nerve signals at different parts of the brain and saying, okay, this part of the brain is associated with the nose of that pig. So when they touch the pig, I can sense that, okay, I've touched something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're really, really far away from saying, I'm going to give you, super high definition visuals with 3D audio and tracking all your hands and then be able to see all the environment around you. And then I'm going to program this giant unicorn that comes on your screen. We don't know how to do that, right? But we can do that today. We can do that today on the devices that we're showing you.
Gotcha.
And on the device. So I at some point we will, right? But if you think about it, those chips that Elon showed off, I think they had 1,000 connectors per chip, which is amazing compared to what the chips are today, which are probably more in the tens of sensors, or maybe 100 sensors per chip. So it's already an order of magnitude better, but our brain has like 100 billion neurons, right? So we're if we want to do this replacement, it is not there yet. We are not at the matrix.
Okay.
We're far away from it.
let's come back down to earth then. And I know it's tough to predict, but what are the 2 or 3 applications, whether it's consumer or enterprise, that you see would sort of make this thing break out? But let's just say somebody comes out with these amazing glasses that are light, cheap enough, has sufficient battery life, and I'm wearing this. Is this some kind of virtual Zoom product that's enhanced? Is it some kind of gaming product, or is it a healthcare product? What do you see as coming out?
I mean, right now, if you see where it's been adopted so far, I think it's on the consumer side. Gaming is definitely a very important use case, and we see that like last year or this year, the Valve Half-Life Alyx software came out and was very, very popular, right? So I think they had like 1 million downloads or something, and these are $60 app products. So it was a very large portion of the PC VR users actually bought this software. I bought it. I spent my 20 hours of gameplay in it. Great, but I just don't see a particular game being the thing that brings you back, right? If you look at what do we spend our time on our computer and on our phone, it's the kind of things that we do every day. It's reading email, it's social networks, it's watching videos. So those are the things I think that will be what we'll also do in VR. And for kids, it's also going to school, right? So I think what we'll find is that in various in each segment, there will be a few killer apps. So if you're let's say training somebody to be one of our customers is a driving school, and what they found was that by training their students in VR, they could take the average passing rate for their school students when they go take their test the first time from, I think it was like 50% to about 85%.
Wow, that makes sense. Actually, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and they can simulate night, they can simulate rain, they can simulate snow, they can simulate dog jumping in front of your car, right? You can't do that when you're just having somebody, drive a regular simulator or drive a car in the street. You can't say, I wanted to rain right now. What would you do? Yeah. But you could do that with, they have like 50 different scenarios that they put their students through, and the teachers can see what the student sees and be able to give them a report afterwards to see what they did right or wrong, right? And that's the kind of thing that can be used for, airplane training or for warehouse forklift training. For training, I think is a huge thing, particularly anything that requires physical touch. So you could simulate that entire environment. You feel like you've experienced something instead of if you just watched a video or if you just read a book, you really don't know how to do something. It's like trying to say, I'm going to teach you how to play golf by, you reading a magazine. That's why.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So you really need to have people do stuff, right? And in those kind of skills type training, VR is a must, right? Now,
sorry, can I just ask a follow-on to that? That actually makes so much sense to me, right? Whether it's dissecting a virtual frog in bio class, or having surgeons practice. I know all these products have existed for years, maybe even decades, whether it's the driving or the flight simulation. Again, are the numbers trending up, and is it a hockey stick, or is it gradual? And then who's driving that? Is there a certain player?
Well, right now, every industry that we've seen is starting to pick this up. So this is something that's really happened over the last couple of years, is that B2B usage is really picking up. If you look at what we were selling to, in 2016 when we first released the Vive, it was probably 90% was to gamers, right? And now we're probably 60 to 70% to B2B. For where the volume is going. So I think it's every industry, everything from training to hospitality to education to offline arcades to schools, they're all starting to healthcare, they're all starting to use this technology in different ways. And I think the next big jump in demand will be remote collaboration, remote work, right? Because now, if you think about it, the average office space at one of the kind of top 15, 20 cities in the world is somewhere between 20 to 25,000 US dollars a year for office space and maintenance of that office space. Right now, if all of my staff is now at home, I could take that same budget. I could buy them a super cool computer and a super cool headset and all the software they need for probably $2,000-3,000. So it's like 1/10 the cost. Right. So and now they don't have to travel. The average business trip in the U.S. is something like $1,000 US of cost to the business. Average international business is like $4,000. So if you think about how many trips you can prevent or reduce by allowing for remote collaboration, it pays for itself in no time. So a lot of businesses are definitely seeing the value of this kind of technology.
Hey, you didn't talk about porn. Porn drives a lot of tech. What's porn telling us about your space? You're president of a public company, so please.
Yeah, so I can't talk too much about it, but I will say that for 3 degrees of freedom devices, what we find is that, and because we actually deliver content to not only our own devices but other people's devices, all of the HTC devices are 6 degrees of freedom, but 3 degrees of freedom devices are very video focused, and we find that probably around 70 and 80% of the videos that are being played by these devices are called unknown origin or undesignated types, which may or may not be what you're talking about. So kind of their unclassified content, which I would suspect may be what people are looking at.
Okay.
So I think there definitely is a demand for that. I think from our existing data, we're seeing that probably about 20 to 30% of the playtime is video watching, and probably something like 60 to 70% of that 20% is maybe in the category you're thinking about. But okay. I think that also is a representation of maybe the early adopter kind of male gamer audience, which may be different once it becomes more popular in the mass market.
Gotcha. Alvin, your brother, a relative that you love, gives you says, Alvin, I just got 100,000. Okay, $100,000 allocated towards, obviously he or she has a lot more money than that, but the $100,000 wants to allocate towards the AR/VR space and investing, not punting, not trading, just investing as a long-term play. Where would you put this money? It could be sort of a certain vertical, certain application, could be a certain company. How would you invest this $100,000 for your dear friend or loved one?
So you're talking about in terms of angel investing, or you're talking about investing in more public companies or funds?
It's just if somebody wants exposure to VR, AR, and has a longer term fundamental approach to investing that 100,000. So it's not putting in and then coming out tomorrow. It's really more of a longer term hold. How would you play? Is there an ETF that mimics your space? Is there a fund, or is there a certain company that you see emerging that's super exciting?
Yeah. So in terms of public companies, I don't think there's an ETF that I know of that kind of takes that in this particular industry as a group. And maybe there's an opportunity there. But I think there are definitely certain classes of products that have been very associated with the kind of the rise of this particular industry, and things like mobile computing chips. Companies like Qualcomm, I think, are going to do very well. Companies like NVIDIA, more on the PC VR side, right? Of course, the major headset manufacturers. So, HTC, Sony. Valve is not a public company, but also Microsoft. And I guess Oculus. So, but Oculus is I guess a very small part of the Facebook stock. So it's hard to maybe. You might be overplaying the social network side versus the VR side if you invest in a Facebook. But I would, I guess if it was a friend that I'm trying to guide, I would actually probably suggest them to invest in some decent startups on an angel perspective, and just put $10,000 or $20,000 in 5 or 10 companies. and kind of spread it a little bit wide in terms of different pieces of the industry. I think that longer term, if they have the patience, and one of those hits, I mean, that's you're an expert in this area. So if it hits, it can do a lot better than just buying a normal public stock. Of course, it's also a lot more risky, but so I don't know if I would recommend that for everybody, but I think because I do have awareness of what companies are doing, which ones are high potential, that might be something I would guide my brother or like a close relative that would trust me to help them.
If your brother were to say, Alvin, you know what, just put it in one play, one vertical application or company, and just leave it there, because I believe in this space. What would be this application or vertical that kind of excites you?
I guess longer term, I think the kind of virtual social network space will be a very important space. Now, I'm not sure if Facebook will be that company, right? Because there's just so much right now negative backlash towards what they're doing. And,
sure.
And I feel like at every technology transition, new leaders are made. So I think kind of Microsoft missed out the whole mobile wave, but they're actually doing a lot of things now right on the software and cloud and even on the hardware side. So I would almost, if I was betting on a Microsoft versus Oculus Facebook, I would actually probably bet on Microsoft. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this.
Interesting. Okay.
But I think it's hard to bet on one thing, honestly, because this industry is a little bit too early, and I almost feel like the old winners are likely not going to be the new winners.
Yep, agree.
Yeah. So this is why I would rather do angel investing if for that kind of scale of money, because I think that might give you the highest return and spread it out and give you maybe the portfolio effect of a safety of a single public company, but with higher upside.
So what happened? So TikTok obviously is on fire, and it's a short video platform, and you would think it's just so entrenched, but it came up this innovation, and obviously they're now on top. We had this phase with Pokemon Go, which is gaming, it's quite social, but then it kind of went quiet. Like what happened there? Like, could it be something like that where is really building on something like a Pokemon Go using the AR to create a sustainable product like TikTok, or is it something else?
I mean, I think those two applications are appealing to different needs from people, right?
Yeah.
TikToks is really about the low attention span of people now. The average person has like a 5 or 7 second attention span, which is like less than a fish. So and the AI algorithms of TikTok is essentially helping keep feeding you more content so that you're just addicted by these kind of mini adrenaline rushes. Pokemon Go, I think, it's appealing to the what they call the seeking, the goal seeking, or kind of the urge for seeking, right? That we all have of trying to find something, find the next thing. It's what drives us as humans when we were in the primitive ages to try to find food and the whole hunting and gathering, right? You had to go find your nuts and find your fruits, and if you discover something cool, it made you excited, so you kept going, right? They're essentially, almost all games now are designed that way to appeal to your need to find something and to discover something, and then it keeps dragging you in there, right? And so I think those two are kind of appealing to some of our primal urges. I think Pokemon Go kind of didn't it didn't take off to the next level because the value just wasn't there, right? It's not something that makes your life really that much better. Okay, so you've gotten all these different, power pills or whatever. It feels good for a while, but it doesn't change your life, right?
Okay.
Whereas I think that the next, what makes phones great is that I can go anywhere, I can work, I can watch a movie, I can go online, I can find information, so you're dependent on this thing, right? You're connected to everybody with it, versus just a simple game. So I think what we're going to find with these next generation devices, with these glasses that are on your head, these glasses will essentially be able to give you any information you need at any time you want and have the specificity that you want. And if you combine it with some AI algorithms, it will be able to predict what you need at different times to make your life easier, right? So essentially what it will do, it will make the average human's intelligence go from 100 or 110 to like 200 or 300, because you'll be able to, there'll be cameras in the front, there'll be sensors, you'll be able to sense all the information that you cannot do with your real eyes. You'll be able to see somebody that you haven't seen for 10 years and their name will come up, and you'll be able to create that connection that you feel like them, right? Or you can see what's happening in their profile recently. You'll be able to ask anytime what you asked for Siri today, instead of waiting and looking at your screen. You actually have that information right there. So if you had to say, oh, I'll bet you the definition of this is XYZ, you could see it right there, right? So it makes you so much smarter than you used to be, and make any information so much more accessible. And I think that's something where if you take it off, you'll feel naked, right? Kind of like when you leave the house without your phone, you feel anxious. You feel like you're missing something. You're not going to be able to find something. You're not going to be able to connect. Like in China, I can't even go and pay for anything if I don't have my phone, because they don't take cash anymore. So it'll be like that with these devices that are on your head, and we will make it part of our daily lives, right? So I think all of those things that we do and take for granted in our daily lives will be replaced by applications that will be on these head-mounted devices, on these glasses or goggles. So
Great.
I think that's the kind of thing that you need to think about. Is people talk about back in the internet boom, it's like any company just put an eye in front of it and make it on internet, and it'll be great. I think in a few years, in 4 or 5 years, essentially it's all the things that we are seeing as businesses today, and there will be a virtual version of those businesses. There will be a let's say a virtual concert hall. There will be a virtual cinema. There will be, virtual schools, right? There will be essentially anything except maybe eating, right? I don't think we can replace eating with VR, but anything that is not physical, you have to have physically go into your body. Even if you physically can touch it, I think we can replace that in a lot of ways with a VR device, right? So, but anything that you need to eat, I think would be hard to replace. But outside of that, and there's even companies right now that are putting kind of augmented eating experiences where you have a soup and then they have an animation around the soup to make it more fun, and you can see the ingredients that went into it, and you can see how many calories are coming from these dishes, through these goggles. So you're eating and using the cameras in the front to see the dishes, or projecting the dishes, a virtual version of the dishes with the real food. There's stuff like that that's happening. So even on the food side, there is some innovation. I tried it, honestly. I'm not sold yet, but I think people are trying, right? So I think that's so we need to reimagine this next world where it's a lot like the Ready Player One story, right? And I don't remember if you watched that movie. The first scene where essentially every room somebody was using their VR device to go to the gym, or to play a game, or to travel, or to all these things. But essentially they're replacing our life experiences and the memories that we create with a virtual one, right? So I think that's where the world is going. And it's just a matter of time. It's not about if, it is a when. And I don't know who's going to win. I won't pretend I do. But I can tell you that the experiences will largely be the kind of things that we already do in our daily lives, but now can be done in a much more vivid way, and much more accessible. So, if I wanted to go to the pyramids, I would normally have to spend, $10,000 or $15,000 on hotel and flights and cars and, all these time. Whereas I could put on a headset and take a super high definition trip
Yep.
to Egypt. Right? So people who never would have had that opportunity now can get an 80% experience. It's not going to be 100%. You won't be able to touch the sand and all these other things, but you're going to feel that grandeur of that giant pyramid in front of you, right? And you'll be able to walk into the tunnels, and you'll be able to hear a guided tour, all these things that you would do if you went to these spaces. So
Yep.
so I think that's where VR would change the world in a lot of ways, of making adding more kind of democratizing experience. I think that's one of the interesting changes, and it actually makes people more equal, because right now we're overly judged by our parents, by our age, by our sex, by our religious backgrounds, by our whereas in VR, you could be represented by whatever avatar you want to be, and you're judged by your skill set and your knowledge. And that makes that global workforce actually available. If you think about right now, there are so many people who are working on Zoom. Do I need to be in the same city as where my office is? And the answer is no, right? And very soon, what that means is that we will go from a local workforce to a global workforce. And you'll be able to access, the best brains in the world to solve whatever problem you have. I think that's where it's going to be changing the societal model a lot, and allowing somebody who's in India who used to make, let's say, I don't know, $100 a month, can now make similar to U.S. salaries if they want to, if they had that skill set, right? So it didn't matter that they didn't grow up in the right country. I don't know if you hear Warren Buffett always talks about, you win the genetic lottery, you've been born in the United States.
Yeah.
But now I think where you're born doesn't matter anymore. That actually I think changes the equation for what fate used to determine a lot.
Yeah. So hey, this is great. I think not only have you validated, I guess, the thesis and the potential for what VR, AR, and this technology can enable, actually strengthen quite a bit. I can totally see, a poor girl in India with the right cheap product, he or she could put in these glasses and train to be a surgeon, right? Just the education itself alone is immense. The potential for good and potential for profit. So yeah. The tricky part obviously is picking the winner. So when you figure that out, please call me first. So let's shift gears a bit. This has been fantastic. I enjoyed this session. The same $100,000, Alvin, and I know you're not a politician, you're not an economist, but you're such a global citizen, obviously working with a Taiwanese company, living in Beijing, US educated, you're so global. If you were to put that $100,000 from a regional standpoint, right? Let's say US, China versus other parts of the world, again, long-term investing, right? How do you, I mean, obviously this ties to where the world is going with US, China. How do you allocate that money and why?
I mean, I guess it depends on your time horizon, right? I think China, from a growth perspective, will definitely grow faster than the United States for the next 5 to 10 years. Now, I think there are definitely some issues that are facing China. Let's say there's a aging population that will be a kind of a ticking time bomb over time. And also this trade war is creating a lot of stress, I think, on both economies, both the U.S. and China economies, and their associated kind of allies, which I actually think is a lose-lose situation. I mean, they're just, we've become a very globalized world and market, and now we're bifurcating again, which kind of reverses the technology benefits that we've created. Now making both markets having to reduplicate the things that already exist, which completely doesn't make sense from a global economic perspective or from a social stability, social growth, social welfare perspective, right? I think the near-term prospects for China will be quite high because the Chinese government has shown a long-term ability to execute plans that they've made. So at least for the next 5 to 10 years, I think they will continue to be able to maintain a certain level of growth and a certain level of internal demand. Right now, the average Chinese still makes probably like 1/5 as much as the average American. So even though the GDP is starting to get close, the average per capita is still very, very different. So there's huge upside potential. I mean, even if the China economy goes to 2 or 3x the US, is still on a per capita basis much lower than the US, right? So there definitely is a lot of opportunity for China to catch up. And if you look at places like Korea and Japan and Taiwan or Singapore, these are all Asian markets that 20 or 30 or 40 years ago was kind of close to where China was, right? So the culture, I think, has shown that it can support growing to the kind of Western levels. And if you look at the major cities in China, it's actually starting to already catch up on maybe not at par, but the kind of the major 2 or 3 cities in China are very close to kind of average American levels in terms of quality of life. Income probably in another 5-10 years will probably catch up. So
so you're more
yeah.
You sound more sorry, keep going. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm more bullish on in terms of, if I was to take the investment, where would I put it? I'd probably put it 60 to 70% in China, and then probably 30% in the US. I think the US will still continue because of the momentum it's created, because of this brain bank that it's created over the last 50 years of attracting the best talent from the world. I think it will continue to create innovation. It will continue to be a market power. It will continue to be the military superpower. But the pace of growth of the economy and the pace of growth of innovation, I think will start to slow down compared to China.
Gotcha. That to me was a very logical and diplomatic answer. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Last topic. You obviously you're an entrepreneur. You run a huge company, a huge P&L right now, a lot of people, but you also have invested in over 100 companies. You mentioned, right? Maybe talk us through a bit about your own investment philosophies. Are there certain principles that you follow, do's and don'ts, in how you invest?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no magic bullets, right? I mean, you've been talking to a lot of the smartest folks in this space, and at the end of the day, you invest in people, you invest in the entrepreneur, you invest in people who have the right personality to be an entrepreneur. I think you can tell fairly quickly when you talk to them what drives them, right? And if what drives them is a quick win and then it's money and it's fame, then they're probably not going to stick into it. Because what we found is that a lot of the companies that we invested in 2016, or that we looked at in 2015 and 16, who came in because of the hype, a lot of them actually just, when the market went south in 2017, they're like, oh shit, I'm jumping ship, right? Those are the kind of folks that you'll lose all your money on. I think we've been very lucky that of our companies that invested, I think less than 5% have actually went out of business. So that's actually, I think
less than 5%. You guys are really early stage. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, not all of them are super healthy and making money, but they're alive, right? They're hanging in there, and I think that's really more of a sign of the tenacity of the entrepreneurs that we was. Now, I think the other thing in terms of investing is you have to hopefully invest in something you understand, and you understand the both the unit economics of it, the real problem behind it, and something that you can help the entrepreneur in, right? So for us, because we're in a way a strategic investor, probably more so than we are a financial investor. We want to invest in companies that we can actually help make successful. Right. So, I'm probably not going to invest in something that has zero relevance to me, even, if it could be a big hit, like, there are companies that came in that does the electronic cigarettes, and, it's been a huge business, or marijuana, it has nothing to do with our business. And we just say, sorry, looks like you've got a great business. If I was, not in this space, I would probably invest in you. But at least as a strategic investor, you have to be more focused, and you have to see how you could actually take advantage or benefit from that investment or that relationship. So I'll give you an example. For this new software suite that we're launching, essentially this new office suite for XR. 4 out of the 5 applications are invested companies that we've made investments in over the last 4 years, so which have become leaders in their subsegments over that period, right? So then now we're saying, hey, you guys have done so great, we're going to help you monetize that and scale it, because what we find is that a lot of the B2B customers, they're saying, hey, I don't want to really buy from a company that has 15, 20, or 30 people, because they're not going to be around in a year or two. But if you guys can put your name behind it, and your support behind it, and your server stability behind it, I'm willing to put that money up, right? So by consolidating them into a single solution with single account, single purchase system, single management system, it makes these apps together, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 is much more than 5, is what we're finding.
Got it. Okay. Great. What was your biggest flop in terms of the 100 companies? Like, what was the biggest mistake? Anything that any funny stories, any crazy stories?
I guess I mean, there's been a lot of companies that didn't do as well, but I don't say they're flops. I mean, there's some that, I guess one company that I really was hoping it would do a lot. I guess I shouldn't say, because
Okay.
It's unfair to the entrepreneur. So, but I will say I definitely I definitely appreciate the tenacity that the entrepreneurs have shown, even the ones that failed, and it really shows a lot about the quality of these entrepreneurs when they're going through the tough times. So and there's been actually a couple companies that they pivoted when they didn't do well, and have come out much stronger. So I guess I don't want to point out any specific companies, because I think
Okay. What about I guess last question there, the one that you're most proud of, in terms of the one that you see that's gonna break out the shell and really be a household name one day?
Well, I mean, I think one of the companies I am very optimistic about is actually a company called VR Chat. So they are right now the #1 social network in VR. And
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and they start out with five kids, very young entrepreneurs, and we invested a significant amount into them, and have kind of left them alone to do their thing. And a company that is now, I think, maybe 20 or 30 people, has multiple X more active users on their VR social network than even Facebook does. Right. So from that perspective, I think they've done very well with very limited resources, and now they're going to be part of our XR suite, which allows them to be then exposed to a much bigger audience. And we're also helping and working with them to now take it to making it mobile, making it onto a lot of other devices, preloading them on the other devices, and so forth. So really helping create kind of that acceleration for them. to get to that critical mass. Right? So
does your community reside in the HTC Vive platform, or is it platform agnostic?
It's platform agnostic. I think pretty much everything that we do is trying to create something that is open, right? This is actually one thing I have to say. I'm a little disappointed with how Facebook has run their Horizon program, which is only runs on Oculus devices, right? And so, with all the people who have invested in these devices, you want to get, particularly in this early stage, you want to get as many of these people who are enthusiasts to come in and join a network. For them to lock out everybody except people who bought their devices, I think it actually is shooting themselves in the foot. So whereas every app that we've created, even our own app store, works on everybody else's devices, including Oculus.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, Alvin, I think I've overextended the time that you've allocated to me, but this has been fantastic content. We learned to really, I think we should dig deeper into the VR AR space. It seems to be quite a bit of potential emerging hockey stick with some breakthroughs in technologies and hardware and applications coming out. So I think it's worth a closer look. You told us that you're a bit more overweight China, but don't give up on the US, which I think that's a good comment. And there seems to be some great stuff coming out of your own portfolio, VR and others. So hey, thank you so much. And we'll let you know when this content comes out online.
Sounds good. Hey, it's always good catching up. So we'll talk again soon. Hopefully we'll see each other in person soon.
Thank you for joining us. Please visit Wizards Institute to access the blog summary of today's session, to learn more about other speakers, and to network with other investment wizards. Wizards Institute, the #1 community to learn smart investing and financial freedom.